Good morning, welcome back to Black Bear Forge. As promised, today we're going to work with some steel cable, and we're going to weld this up into what is often referred to as simply cable Damascus. This produces an interesting pattern when etched, but it's unique and not exactly like most of the other Damascus steels out there. It's also a lot easier because you don't have to do all that folding and re-welding. Now, I have made knives out of cable before, but today I want to do something I've never done before, and that is make an axe out of steel cable. Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare, an online learning community. For most of this, I'm going to flux using 20 Mule Team borax. It's cheap, it's readily available, it melts and really flows down into the cable to help clean out all the crud and the old rust and whatever's in there. The 60-degree V-swedge we made in the previous video will be the ideal thing for welding up the smaller diameter cable. You want light, rapid blows to get this to weld. As you weld the cable up, you always want to work in a direction that tightens the twist instead of one that unwinds the cable. We're going to start by just forge welding both ends and squaring them up a little bit. That way we'll be able to put this in a vise, twist it tighter, and the cable will weld up better, be easier to control, and probably make a better pattern in the long run. I can see the cable slipping as I hammer, so it's not welding, so back in the fire. Now I'm going to go ahead and let those air cool and normalize. And it's important to remember that cable is high carbon steel. I've seen it listed as plow steel, improved plow steel, or extra improved plow steel. And my understanding is that corresponds with 1075, 1085, and 1095 steel. The person that gave this to me said that it was extra improved plow steel, so that means this is 1095. So you got to treat it like high carbon steel. Don't quench it to cool it off while you're working with it. Let it normalize and maybe even anneal it if that's something you would prefer to do. While that cools and normalizes, this is a great opportunity to thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes to choose from. It's a great opportunity for anybody who wants to learn new skills or expand their creative interests. Now personally, most of what I'm looking for on Skillshare has to do with making videos right here on YouTube. And they have lots of classes on YouTube in general, videography, lighting. And right now I'm taking a class with Thomas George on audio for video production.
Welcome to the Skillshare class. My name is Thomas George. I'm an audio engineer and course creator.
Skillshare also has classes in things like product photography, and there's even a few classes on blacksmithing. You can try Skillshare risk-free. The first 1,000 people that use the link in my video description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now let's get back to our project. Our little pieces of welded up cable have cooled off enough to handle. I've trimmed the ends off so I can inspect it, make sure this is a good solid weld and all these look good and solid. There's always going to be a few little inclusions and cold shuts and oddities in the welded up cable. Personally, I think that's part of what gives it its character in the finished piece. It's just something to be aware of. Now, some people like to disassemble the cable into bigger strands. They soak it in a solvent, make sure it's good and clean, reassemble it, and weld the ends up so it doesn't untwist. Put a lot more work into it, and you probably do end up with cleaner welds doing it that way. Never had any problems. I've never had a knife fail. They just have a little bit of character in some of those little odd spots. Now I want to go grind the flat side of these fairly clean. I'll weld these up into one billet, and then we're going to go ahead and approach this more like you would typical Damascus, forge this billet down into one piece, and that's what we're going to make our axe out of. Okay, I've got some good tack welds on this. It doesn't need anything special. Just has to stay together until we get the forge welds. I also put a little stub of 5/8 on there. This will make it a little bit easier to hold and maneuver at the anvil, hydraulic press, and at the power hammer, because some of this will be done in all those places. I'll probably set the initial weld right here at the anvil, then we'll go to the hydraulic press to get it all consolidated as well as we can. But I'll refine it under the power hammer because I can move it between every blow and really get it to the right shape. Ultimately, I want to go for something that's about a 1/2 inch thick and as wide as this will widen out. And then we'll just see how long it gets during that process. Well, it ends up being exactly 1/2 by 1, and I think that'll be big enough to make a tomahawk style axe or little camp axe out of. I am going to let this cool again though so I can do the layout work, trim the ends off again. The ends are always the most problematic part, so I like to trim those off and get down to good clean weld before I do anything. Now my pattern piece that I keep on the wall for a regular camp axe out of 1/2 by 1.5 is 9 inches long. So I may cut this at 9, may even cut it as short as 8 and save a little bit of this for some other project. And that way this will be a nice small, better proportioned axe. I think that's probably what I'll do. Cut a little bit off one end, cut it at 8, leave whatever's left on my little stub that I can hold on to. Maybe eventually I'll make a knife. Now that leaves me a very nicely welded up billet of cable. I don't see any rough spots, no loose wires. There are no inclusions or cold shuts visible at the ends where I cut it off. Really happy where this is going. I'm at 1/2 by 1 by 8 inches long currently, and I think this will make a nice lightweight little camp axe or belt axe. Not going to be anything real big. Although I got some of that big cable I've also welded up, and one of these days we'll look at making an axe out of some of that. So far, this has all been prep work, and all we've done is end up with something we can make an axe out of. The entire process of making an axe still lies before us, so tune in next week and we'll get to work turning this piece of cable into a functional axe. And at some point, we'll turn this bit into a little utility knife. I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit the subscribe button down there. It costs nothing to subscribe to a YouTube channel, and it really does help the channel grow. In the meantime, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you next week, and we'll get to work on this axe.